In this episode of B.Hooked Crochet, I'm going to teach you how to crochet the shell stitch. This is a really great stitch pattern for a lot of different projects. Now, my name is Brittany, and I'll be your guide throughout this tutorial. For a complete supplies list and written instructions for this stitch pattern, please visit bhookedcrochet.com/shell stitch. Let's go ahead and get started. There are many variations of the shell stitch, and I'm going to demonstrate just one of those. This is the particular pattern that I like to use. And for this variation, your foundation chain must be a multiple of 6, and then you'll add 7 chains to that at the end. So multiple of 6 plus 7. Now for this demonstration, I will chain 12, and then I'll add 7 to that. To begin our foundation row, we're going to skip the first chain. That's going to count as a single crochet. It may be a good idea for you to place a stitch marker there because we're going to work into that chain when we come back on one of the subsequent rows. So we're skipping that first chain, and then we're going to skip the next 2. And we're going to work 5 double crochets into the 4th chain from the hook. Next, we're going to skip 2 chains. We'll skip this chain right here that's next to our shell, and then we'll skip the next chain. And we're going to work a single crochet into the 3rd. Now we'll skip 2 chains and work 5 double crochet into the 3rd. You really want to pay close attention to your foundation chain for this first row because this is going to be what sets up your entire project. So if you're off by 1 chain, then when you come to the end of your row, you're going to run into problems. And working on a little swatch like this, it's not really a big deal. But if you're working up a blanket, something that has 100 or more chains, that could really be devastating when you get to the end of that and your stitch count is off. That's our repeat for this row. We're going to skip the next 2 chains and then work a single crochet in the next. Skip 2 chains, work 5 double crochet in the next. And you'll just repeat that until you get to the end of your row. Now, as you can see, I'm already to the end of my little swatch here. So I'm going to skip these next 2 chains. Then I have 1 remaining. I'm going to make a single crochet in the last chain. And that should be the case for you too. No matter how long your foundation is, you should end up with a single crochet in your last chain. And if it doesn't work out that way, then go back and look through your work and make sure that you were skipping 2 chains in between each one of these elements. Now that we have that foundation row taken care of, we're going to move into the 2-row pattern repeat for the shell stitch. What we want to keep in mind is that we want our shells to be offset from each other. So we can clearly see our 3 shells here. Well, on row 2, we want to have the shells in between. So just keep that in mind as we're setting up for row 2, we're going to chain 3, and this chain 3 is going to count as 1 double crochet. Now on the edges, we can't do a full shell because then we wouldn't have straight edges. So we have to do a half of a shell on each of the sides. And the way we're going to do that, we have 3 chains that's counting as 1 double crochet. We just need to add 2 more double crochets to the same space. And I'm just working that in that last single crochet from the previous row. Now we're going to skip 2 stitches and work a single crochet in the next. We'll skip 2 stitches and work 5 double crochets in the next, and that just so happens to be that single crochet from the previous row. Now we'll skip 2 stitches and single crochet in the next, and that's our really simple pattern repeat. We can get to the point where we don't really have to count the stitches that we're skipping. Now that we're past the foundation, we can just see the single crochet and know that we have to put a shell there, so 5 double crochets. And our single crochet is in the middle stitch of the shell from the row below. So just something to keep in mind as you're working this stitch pattern. And when you come to the end of your row, again, I'm just going to skip 2 stitches, single crochet in the next. And I mentioned earlier that we were going to work some stitches into that first chain that we skipped. Now, if you placed a stitch marker, you'll know exactly where that is. And what we're going to do is mimic the same thing that we did at the beginning of this row. We need to have a half of a shell, and we're going to do that by making 3 double crochets in that chain 1. And that finishes row 2. Row 3 is the final row in the pattern repeat, so it's the last row that we're going to repeat the longer our project gets. This time we're going to start by chaining 1. Again, we want to keep our shells offset from each other. So since we have a shell, even though it's a half shell, we have a shell here, that means we have to start with a single crochet so that we can have shells in between. So with that in mind, that chain 1 counts as a single crochet. Again, we're going to work in this stitch later on, so if you're going to have trouble finding this chain to work into, go ahead and just place a stitch marker there right now. Then you'll skip 2 stitches, you'll work 5 double crochet in the next, and you'll skip 2 stitches, single crochet in the next, skip 2 stitches, 5 double crochet in the next. Now once you make it to the end of row 3, we're going to make a single crochet to finish off the row. We have to locate that chain 3. Remember we said that chain 3 counted as a double crochet, and because of that we need to work into it for our last stitch. So you'll find the 3rd chain or the top chain here and just make a single crochet. Now what you would do at this point is you will continue crocheting rows 1 and 2 over and over until your project reaches the length that you desire. A couple things to keep in mind with this stitch. As you can see here, it works really beautifully with a single color, but it also looks really great with variegated yarn that self-stripes, or if you want to change colors after every row or every couple of rows. That's also a pretty cool little way to add some color to your project and play with this stitch as well. That wraps up our tutorial on the shell stitch, and once again you can find the supplies list and the written instructions over on my website. That link is bhookedcrochet.com/shell stitch. You can also get the link in the description below this video. Now if you have found some really great value in either this tutorial or some of my others, if I could ask you to just do one little favor in return, it would just make my day. Sharing is one of the greatest ways that people can find my channel, my teaching style. So if you have found something really great in any of the projects or tutorials that I'm doing and you want to share that with somebody, why don't you go ahead and just share it on your favorite social media channel. If you like to use Facebook or Instagram, I'm on both of these. And that would just be one really great way to say thank you, and I would appreciate that so much. Now, on behalf of B.Hooked Crochet, I'm your host, Brittany, and I look forward to serving you in the next